Hello and welcome. 'Tis spooky season, and 'tis the season for some spooky Batman. Today we are going to be looking at Haunted Night, which is a selection or a collection or some other kind of action. Gotta be careful with that. Of Halloween specials from the Jeff Loeb Tim Sale Batman run. And when I've been watching people's kind of like videos about best Batman stories and so on and so forth, and they talk about the Jeff Loeb Batman run, most people seem to put Haunted Night as the final book in like the kind of free book series, I guess if you're going by omnibuses. But we're doing the Eagle Moss Collections chronology here, and they put Haunted Night as the first book. And you might wonder, how's that possible that some people can think of it as early in the, Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale chronology, and some people can think of it as final? And that's because, as I mentioned, it is a collection of four, I think, is it 4 or is it 3? Anyway, multiple years worth of Halloween specials. So while technically I've not read the story which introduces the Joker into Batman's life, the Joker does appear as a character in the final Halloween special. I know that. I'm fine with it. And man, what a perfect time of year to be reading these stories. I love October, I love Halloween, I love Batman, and having that all combined in this perfect storm has just been an absolute treat. And I've still got the long Halloween to read after this. So yes, Haunted Night has been my introduction to the Jeff Loeb Tim Sale Batman, and it's just so good. It's just a delight. And this is before I've reached any like real intricate, big story arcs or anything like that. This is just the Halloween specials. Maybe that's the wrong way to think about this, but that's the way I'm assuming is the correct way to consider this. As like these are standalone stories. They're not necessarily connected to anything larger that's going on. The first one, I believe, introduces us to the now well-known character of Scarecrow, who gets his victims to inhale a fear toxin which incites hallucinations of their worst fears. And at the same time, we see this woman called Jillian enter Bruce's life, and Bruce shows a rare kind of interest in her. He says, Alfred, get her number. And he starts having some real thoughts about how much of his life is he giving to his Batman persona, and how much of that time is he using to escape from real world commitments and stuff like that. Is it safe to let someone else in? Is it finally time to actually seek out a partner, that kind of thing? And at one point, Batman chases Scarecrow into this hedge maze, which has this wonderful dark backstory about a time when some children went missing inside it, and the police had to look for them, and by the time they'd found them, they'd starved to death, and Bruce is like, they should have cut this maze down by now. Personally, I don't know how feasible that actually is as a real world thing that could happen, considering they could just search via helicopter and cut down the bushes when looking for them, but it's a thing, and we don't need to question it too directly. I really hope that has not ever happened in the real world before. But in this story, Scarecrow has kind of like poisoned the hedges with like barbed nettles and stuff, which induced this fear toxin in Batman. Because one little touch I quite like is that when Scarecrow just turned around and puffed his fear toxin into Batman's face at the start of the story, Batman was ready for it, and he did not breathe it in, and he was fine. And I think that's kind of fun, because a lot of the times in depictions of Batman versus Scarecrow, you will see Scarecrow just turn around and do that, and Batman just goes and breathes it in, and then he has a bad time. And it's fun to see that in the very first occasion of us meeting Scarecrow. It's actually more interesting and nuanced than that, because Batman is quite a capable fighter and understands what Scarecrow is capable of and knows to avoid breathing in the gas. And so he gets him another way. And of course, because he's thinking so much about Jillian recently, if that is her real name, that is primarily what of his main fears are about. And it's just so interesting to see that exploration of like Bruce's loneliness and his self-inflicted loneliness, and fearing whether or not he should be getting into a relationship and that kind of thing. And then of course the real world comes crashing down, because it turns out that Jillian is a fake persona, and it's this woman who goes around the world kind of seducing billionaires and killing them off, and getting herself written into their fortunes and wills and stuff. So sadly, while Bruce finally comes to this realization of, I can let someone else in, I don't need this to be a fear, then Alfred is kind of like, don't hate me for this, but she's gonna kill you. It was a very good story. Next up, we had the story with the Mad Hatter, and more things revolving around Bruce's mother. We learn that the Mad Hatter, who takes inspiration from Alice in Wonderland, disturbs Bruce on a deeper level than most of his other villains because, you know, Alice in Wonderland is a treasured childhood memory he has reading that book with his mother, and he really does not want his job as Batman to end up warping that memory as well. Something else we see in this story which I find quite interesting is, and maybe this ties into the larger overarching Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale stuff, and maybe I'll see more of it, we see Jim Gordon adopt Barbara, who, you know, obviously ends up becoming Batgirl when she's a bit older. And this is something I didn't know about Barbara. I didn't know that she was adopted by Jim Gordon. I thought she was Jim Gordon's biological daughter. But biologically, she's his niece. And it's really interesting to see, you know, the very early days of that relationship. I find it interesting that she immediately, like, calls him dad and Barbara mum. And we can see from her diary entries that she struggles with that herself. Like, she calls him uncle, then dad, then Jim, and she crosses out each one. And we see this relationship between Jim Gordon and Barbara where he's worried about her going out by herself because she's a teenager and Gotham is Gotham. And it's fun knowing that she's going to become Batgirl, right? Knowing that there are going to be times where she's clearly independent enough, even as a teenager, to have this persona of Batgirl without Jim knowing. So you can see that clearly as things stand, she would never be able to become Batgirl in this kind of situation. So some kind of trust needs to be established between the two of them, and this is kind of an origin story, or like a proto-origin story in that sense, because Batgirl is never brought up or considered or mentioned or anything like that. I don't actually know if the character of Batgirl existed yet, or if this is a series of stories that take place just earlier in Bruce Wayne's history or what. That's kind of interesting, because previously we had that Prey story which took place in Batman's very early years, and kind of felt like a pseudo-sequel to Batman Year One, but that took place in the pages of Legends of the Dark Knight, which kind of sounds like it's made to be like exploration of Batman's earlier continuity, whereas this seems like it comes from the pages of just Batman or Detective Comics. I haven't actually looked. Which one is it? Would you look at that? It is Legends of a Dark Knight. I'm a fool. Learning in real time. Anyway, the Mad Hatter's been kidnapping children because Gotham, and Barbara ends up sneaking out and getting kidnapped, and that's how that story comes full circle. But one little touch I really did like at the end of his story was Bruce going into his library and deciding to just sit down and read some Alice in Wonderland because it's a rainy day, and on a rainy day he misses his mother the most because that is the memory he has of reading Alice in Wonderland with his mother. Because I skipped over this bit as well, but there is a moment as well where we meet Bruce's kind of psychiatrist he had for like grief counseling when he was younger, this doctor, and she's telling him how you don't have to bury all of these happy memories just because you have sad associations with them later in the future. And it's really nice to see this mini character arc where Bruce comes to understand that himself. And then finally we have, I guess it is 3 stories now that I think about it, it is the ghost of Halloween past, present and future, it feels like. Kind of a weird one because it is a bit of an adaptation of A Christmas Carol, but not only is it adapted for Batman, it's also adapted as a Halloween story, and I think that makes a decent bit of sense because Batman is Bruce Wayne, is this billionaire who has kind of like the need for this almost outside perspective, if it is truly an outside perspective on his life, or if it actually comes from inside, that's up to interpretation. But we see him a little bit bitter, like he's like, oh, I'm at one of these damn charity ball things, I hate doing these. And I actually remember thinking, okay, Bruce, hating charity, that's a bit much. But thankfully that was intentional, it actually tied into his arc. Because after eating some bad shrimp apparently, or maybe being scratched by the penguin's knife, there's touching the doorknob and maybe there was something laced on it. Like, there are plenty of explanations provided to us. Bruce ends up having a feverish night's sleep, and he ends up having these dreams in which he is visited by, in sequence, Poison Ivy to talk about the past, Joker to talk about the present, and Death, but that's basically a representation of his future self to talk about the future. And if I had to find one nitpick about this entire book, it would probably be that I don't see how Poison Ivy represents the past. I guess Joker represents the present because this ties into the Long Halloween story period in which we're meeting the Joker, maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe there's some further comic context that I'm not familiar with there. But my favourite part about this story is it gets Bruce to see that there should be more to his life than being Batman. He shouldn't view going to these charity balls as this obligation. He shouldn't view having to be Bruce Wayne as this obligation. And so when Halloween night comes in the morning, he tells Alfred that no, actually, I'm not going to be going out as Batman tonight. The police can deal with any problems out there tonight. I'm going to stay home and see to the trick-or-treaters. And it's beautiful to see. I love when Batman embraces his humanity and has a positive outlook on life because it's so hard-earned for him. And we see him get in touch with Lucius Fox and establish the Wayne Foundation, which I believe is a thing going forwards throughout the chronology, as just like him putting money back into Gotham and helping children and stuff like that. And it's very wholesome. And it was really nice to see. And here's the part of the video where I show you the book I read itself. Look at this cover. Look at this. This is one of my favorite looking Eaglemoss covers that I own. It's so nice. It's so colorful. It's so Halloween. It just pops. It's great. As I've mentioned before, this is an older story, and therefore this is back before the days of digital artistry, and sometimes that can come across a bit less refined, but it also has so much more character to it. I really, really do love it. Like, look at the spooky Grim Reaper Batman. And honestly, this was my favorite double-page spread of the entire book. Look at it. It's got so much character. Now, this is a hallucinated thing. Alfred's not actually tied up with a gag in his mouth with Joker sitting there. It's supposed to show one of Batman's greatest fears, you know. His greatest villain actually, like, finding out where he lives and who he is and attacking his loved ones in, like, a humiliating and horrible way. And it's just so evocative. Like, Joker, like, with his face in his hand like that, like, so good. And the proportions, I love it, man. There are so many great pages in this book, though. We would be here for days if I went through them all. I really loved this chase scene across the train where Batman's chasing Mad Hatter. It looks so nice. But anyway, it's funny, I've been looking at this Eaglemoss collection for years now, as I mentioned at the start of this series, as like this project I wanted to do, and I hadn't read most of them. Most of them are honestly still in their plastic wrapping, or cellophane, or whatever you call it. But I was looking at them almost as like, I've got like these editions, you know, almost like these cheap editions, even though they cost the same as a trade paperback at the time. But I'm really growing to appreciate them. Like the fact that they're hardback, even though they're not like these premier, like glossy, super nice looking hardbacks, just having this stuff collected, and maybe it's also because I've been reading the compact comics and stuff, which I really do love, but like seeing like the original sized art as well. I think I just appreciate it more than I ever have before that I own these books. But next up is The Long Halloween, and that I do own in Compact Comics Edition, because as I mentioned previously as well, for some reason this was not included in the Eaglemoss collection, so I had to go grab it myself. It's funny, I just said it's nice to have it in full art. I'm also really looking forward to reading the Compact Comic Edition, because I also really like the Compact Comics. They're very cozy, they're very chunky, they're quite nice. I think I put out a short today talking about Daredevil Born Again, the premiere edition, which, if you don't know, is Marvel's answer to Compact Comics, and that has its own strengths and weaknesses, and I really like what they're doing in ways that DC aren't doing. I feel very appreciative for all forms of graphic novels today, I guess. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for me. Loved Haunted Night. Very excited to get onto The Long Halloween. Might read Daredevil Born Again first, just because I've already started it, and I don't want to be juggling too many things that I'm reading at the same time, so maybe we'll review that first. I suppose I could mention, if you caught the fact that I was talking about Wonder Woman Earth 1, and I haven't done a review for that. I actually did record a full review, but I decided not to go ahead and post it, just because the review was mostly me trying to fathom that book. That book, for anyone who knows about it, is probably giggling right now. It's It's unique. It's not what I was expecting. It's not bad, but it has a lot of messaging behind it where I think it's got good intentions and it's got a good heart, and I agree with a lot of the things it has to say, but I also think in some ways it went a little too far with it, and ended up coming across totalitarian where maybe it didn't mean to. And I don't know, in that review where I'm spending 10 minutes going into the details about that kind of stuff, I just didn't feel like posting it, because sometimes the internet can be the internet, and me fathoming a thing can be misinterpreted or misunderstood, or people can be very angry at the source material and take that anger on me, so on and so forth. So there you go, you just get a mini review instead. Just you lot, but we don't know if the video is going to hit the algorithm and find people. So hopefully you can understand that. Anyway, I'm going to go now. I'm going to go read some comics, if you can believe it. So thanks for checking us out. Throw it a like if you did like the video. Helps this channel grow. It's very small, teeny tiny channel right now. Hoping to get more eyes on it at some point. But thank you for being here. I'm glad your eyes are on it. And I will catch you in whatever I make next.